Crystalline podcast. Crystalline podcast.
Conversations to inspire.
Hello and welcome to the Crystalline podcast, inspirational conversations with extraordinary folk. Today we had the pleasure of sitting down with the legend Wild John. Enjoy.
Okay, welcome ladies and gentlemen. Today on the podcast we have a very special guest, a dear friend of mine, an expert in the fields of survival, primitive ways, bushcraft, and a master leather worker. I have personally never seen a man move as much soil in a day with a shovel as Wild John. I've been very looking forward to sharing his insights. So, without further ado, John, my man, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm very good.
Splendid. Whereabouts are you right now? It looks like you're in a hot air balloon or something.
I'm in a teepee, mate, in Devon.
Ah, splendid. So, for the listeners out there that aren't familiar with you, would you share a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, go for it. So, growing up, I was always really into sort of physical sports and stuff like that, like BMXing and mountain biking, trials riding. Got really into basketball, and I've always got sort of like really, really into things. So, as life's gone on, I've got to the point in my life where sort of freedom is starting to become a pretty good importance to me. So learning like bushcraft and living out in the woods and that kind of thing, that was sort of like, connected to trying to learn to be free, but also just that was like the thing I think I was looking for my whole life. That was like when I found that, I was like, this is what I've been looking for, bushcraft, living out in the woods, those kind of skills. I was like, this is it for me. I was kind of like, I have found my thing. So yeah.
How did you find bushcraft then? From BMXing and basketball, how did you end up in the bushcraft?
I mean, I've always loved going out in the woods. I've always been in nature. I grew up in Petersfield in Hampshire. I was surrounded by nature. And also, I'll explain later as well how it's actually in my blood to kind of like live that way. But I just happened to, meet a friend. He was into sort of similar things as me. We were both on that curious journey. And he was like he'd been into bushcraft for years. And he was like, you into going camping? I was like, oh, yeah, for sure, mate. And he was like, yeah, we should go camping. So I just took like my crappy little blue sleeping bag and my blue tarp and went out camping with him. And when we got out there, I saw his kit, saw his really good rucksack and good boots and amazing knife and all this. And I was like, yeah, that's what I need. I need some good kit to take out in the woods so that, I can, go out camping more and I'm going to have a better time. And, and also like, this is it, I'm into this. So yeah, that's where the sort of journey began. I'd go out camping with my mate and start to get some new bits of kit. And then before you know it, I realised I'm like hooked on kit, trying to find the right kit, getting good boots, learning about knives. And yeah, I went deep into all that, mate, but from doing that, like just when I could with Pete, I started basically camping out every single night. I was like, I ain't staying in a flat anymore. No way. I'm going to go and camp up in the woods. So after camping in the woods every single night for quite a while, I started sort of like staring at this bank thinking, do you know what? I could dig into that bank and dig out a little underground house and like build such a well hidden spot that, I don't mind putting the effort in because nobody's going to find it if it's hidden enough. So that's like my journey went. I used to go to bed, wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, run up into the woods and work from 2 in the morning till 7 o'clock in the morning, then go to sleep for a little bit, then run round to my mate's surf shop and go to work. And I basically dug this little underground house out. We ended up calling it Mole End. And after I'd built it, me and Holly basically ditched the flat and moved up to there. We ended up living up there for about 3.5 years. But that's where things got life just became an adventure all the time, living in a little underground house, going off on little bushcraft missions, learning loads about kit, breaking loads of kit, making loads of cool stuff. And yeah, I was just having loads and loads of fun. And from living like that, mate, I was just, oh mate, honestly, the changes it made in my life was just awesome. I was just having like proper adventure, everything was like magical. Like I was just, yeah, it's just such a good time in my life. But from doing that, because like I say, I got really into it. I was like, I want to learn everything about this. And also, along with my curious journey of trying to find out what life's all about, learning about, things that are going on in the world, which I'm starting to think, and I'm studying about survival. So I'm like learning about, if the power goes down, what you're going to do, where you're going to get your water from, where you're going to get your food, all this kind of stuff, all this stuff's in my brain. So I'm just kind of realizing more and more that I just need to learn like everything I can. And then, I'm always going to be free. It's just life's going to be an adventure. And I kind of was always a bit of an anxious person as well through life. And this was curing my anxiety. This was like making me like, I can go anywhere now with like nothing. And I just know I'm going to be all right. I'm not like stressed anymore because I'm just, yeah, I just know how to kind of like take care of myself. But along with that, after, go for it.
Sorry, I was just gonna say who. So from Peter, when you started the camping and then you got to like Mole End, how did you? What was your source of knowledge to further push your skills forward in that? Because you can't just. I mean, or did you just discover it yourself?
So I'm dyslexic. So like when I was at school, I didn't really learn from other people. I just kind of like have my own way of learning. Throughout my whole life, I've always done my own learning. I was like, oh, even if it's the hard route, I don't care. I think you just learn the best from making mistakes. But I've always been like that. I just started going out camping and just started to figure it all out for myself. It was later on in the journey when, after using a lot of modern kit and breaking it, and then going to like more old school kind of traditional kit, like wool blankets, canvas rucksacks, older stuff, which just doesn't break. Because when you live in it all the time, you just rinse kit, like I wasn't a weekend warrior. And most of the kit that most people use does not last 5 minutes if you're doing it every day. So even after like breaking some of the old strong kit, I started to like, rather than thinking I'll make my own kit, which I did later on a lot more of, I started to think, do you know what? They never had any of this gear like years ago. They had none of it. They were using stone tools and stuff like that. And yet they were obviously able to survive. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here now having this chat. So as I started to think like that, just another like funny like curiosity, like just things came in. I just turned the internet on when I was down at Holly's dad's, and I saw a video with a guy called Tom Brown Jr. on YouTube. This guy popped up, and I saw an interview with him, and I was like, no way, this guy's talking about like rubbing sticks together to make fire. He's talking about stone tools. This guy's like, it's not like Ray Mears. Don't get me wrong, I love Ray Mears and not knocking Ray at all. Ray's awesome.
Shout out Ray
But
Mears.
Ray's for like modern backpacks, steel knives. It's a bit more modern technology. Is like this guy's talking about no modern technology at all. He's talking stone tools, bone tools, lighting fire with sticks, like hunting animals with a spear, taking the skin off, turning it into buckskin, make your own clothing. I was like, if I could learn that, then oh my God, like, I could go anywhere with nothing. I could have everything taken off me and just be somewhere and just, just make everything I need again. And to me, I was like, I want to know how to do that. I just think that would be awesome. Just yeah, just to be able to make all my own stuff from nothing. And also to me as well, like when I heard about that, it kind of knocked something in me of like, you know what? That's where we really come from. Like that's what human beings used to do, and that's like where we really actually do come from. And like that was starting to answer lots of other questions that I was sort of thinking about. It's, along the journey the whole time, I'm also trying to answer the question to myself of like, what is this place really? Like, what is life? What are we really supposed to be doing here? Is there a purpose? Like what's going on? And coming, getting connected with that guy, learning these skills, like that answered also those questions I had as well. And I was also really lucky at that period of time in my life. I wasn't pinned down with like a mortgage and a job and stuff like that. I did a carpentry job in my early 20s and saved up a bit of money. And then when I discovered this, I just ditched everything. I was like, right, that's it. I'm not getting a house. I'm not getting a mortgage. I'm not doing nothing. I am just going to carry on this journey until I can basically just do all these skills that I need to learn. Like that's where I dedicated like 20 years of my life to.
So the jump from modern tech, bushcraft, to primitive skills and survival. How long was that transition till you felt competent that you could be left alone?
So I probably spent about 5 years kind of really into bushcraft, learning like, sort of doing like the more modern gear, then slowly transitioning to sort of more old fashioned kit and stuff like that, probably about 5 or 6 years. And then it took me about 12 to 13 years of like, then I mean just doing that and nothing else, a little bit of other stuff. But it took me about 12, 13 years of just obsessively learning how to make fire, getting good at stone tools, hunting, tracking, making clothes, weaving stuff, shelters, pottery. Yeah, it took roughly about 10 to 12 years to get to the point now where, I could be dropped off with nothing. And as long as, nothing horribly goes wrong, then I'll get to the point where, I've got shoes, I've got clothes, I've got tools, I've got shelter, I've got everything I need.
Have you ever put this to the test?
I certainly have, mate. Yeah, I certainly have. That was something I really wanted to do. I really wanted to know that I can actually do this. Like I say, I wasn't working, and we, after doing these sort of stuff in the UK for a certain amount of time, we ended up moving over to Europe and traveling around Europe a bit, just trying to find somewhere where, you can kind of go. And well, for me anyway, I'm trying to find somewhere I can go and run around with a spear and, wear mad clothing that I've made myself and not get a phone call from like somebody like calling the police or the nut house. Like there's some loony guy running around in the woods with a stone spear. Quick, quick, call Karen. So I needed to find somewhere where I wasn't going to be dealing with any of that nonsense. And the place where we ended up was a place where we used to go down surfing years ago. When I met Holly, we were die-hard surfers. But yeah, we went down to Portugal, and there's just big bits of land down there where there's just nothing going on. Like I really mean it. You know what I mean? You can walk for hours, and there's no fences, there's no gates, there's no one around, there's nothing going on, and that's a difficult thing to find. Really difficult. It's as difficult finding that as it is trying to find like a pure, untouched natural woods. That was the one thing that broke my heart traveling around was you realise that, most of the ancient woods, we've chopped it all down. We've done so, I didn't realize quite the extent of the damage that we've done until you drive around looking for areas which are like old and pristine. You're like, oh, we bloody ruined them all. It's so sad. But yeah, so anyway, I ended up down Portugal, and that's where I was slowly, like really, really spending more and more and more time going out and just being in like what you would call survival. But you have to understand, but by this time, I've been living this way, building up for years and years and years and getting really confident and totally used to it and not freaked out at all about, sleeping in a house made out of pine needles or, needing to make a fire or, catching my food. It's nothing new. Well, I didn't go from like kind of learning a bit and then threw myself into some, unexpected survival situation. Like to me, it didn't even necessarily really seem like that because I'm pretty well trained, I'd pretty well skilled up by this time. So, and also Portugal has probably got one of the easiest environments to survive in terms of like the weather and the cold. Like if you're in a wet, cold environment and you're surviving on your own, like that's a lot harder, a hell of a lot harder. But the climate over there makes the, certain part of survival a lot easier. So for me, it's more food and water. But then, once you know where the water sources are and you know whether they're safe or not, that's easy. And then after that, it's just getting food. But, if you can catch a wild boar, you are sorted for a long time. And there's a shitload of wild boars around there. Wild boars, rats, fish, birds, whatever you can eat. Rats actually taste amazing, but I wouldn't eat obviously a London sewer rat, but a wild Portuguese rat, mate, tastes like fatty chicken. So good. So good.
Break it down for me. So what was the bit leading up to it, and then how did this? Run me through the moment you were like, right, I'm going out here for how long was it again?
I mean, I did it in stints. I just started off going off sometimes for like 3 or 4 days, and then you extend that to a couple of weeks. and then, get comfortable in a couple of weeks. And then I got to the point where I went off and did, months, because Holly was away. Holly was in America. Holly, funnily enough, was at the Tom Brown Tracker School. Like, she'd gone out there to do vision quests and actually do like philosophy classes and all the, these sort of primitive skills, like with the man, like this is the guy I come across on the internet. And to me, like, this guy is amazing, mate. Like, his story, his background is phenomenal. Young boy, his best friend he grew up with, his grandfather was a full-blood displaced Apache scout, like the real deal. This guy never had a bank account, never had a car, never used electricity, none of that. He had lived like how our ancestors lived his whole life. Hunted all of his food, made all his own clothes, made all his own shelter, everything. Like, this guy was incredible. And what he passed on to Tom, oh my God, like, his story is amazing. So yeah, Holly's out there learning from this dude, and then which has given me the time to go off and just live like that in an extended period of time. So, you know, I mean, to be quite honest, most of the time I spent hunting, which is, is what I enjoyed doing. And also, like, that's kind of what I really needed to do when I was out there, was just make sure I've got food. I'm not, shelter's not so much of an issue. You've got water sorted. You don't need to be making like big pair of furry boots and a big crazy full-on jacket to survive through the winter. For me, it's mostly about food. Like, in that environment that I was in, I was spending a long time hunting wild boars and setting up small traps for small game, making like primitive fishing kit from plant materials and stuff like that. It's just, yeah, just doing all those kind of things all the time. Stone tools, doing everything with stone tools, mate, is everything takes ages. You know what I mean? If you want to cut down just a piece of wood like that thick with a stone tool, especially in Portugal, they have no flint. They have nothing. They have no decent stones out there for making stone tools. So like over here, I'm like spoiled now. I've got like amazing limestone, flint. It's just so easy to whittle up an axe and be able to chop down things and make good tools. But over there, stone tools, oh my God, trying to make a quartz arrowhead is almost impossible. So like that was a big challenge out there.
Did anyone ever come across you when you're in this primitive state? I mean, in my head, I'm imagining you with a loincloth and haven't showered in a while, maybe.
So the most memorable moment of all time when I was out there was where I had a little like pine needle house set up and had like kind of like leathers in the background, furs in like racks, like dried out, being stretched out, all, tied out with like other bits of hide. I've got a loincloth on, probably looking, yeah, like I say, a bit dirty, a bit hairy. And everything around me, like, there's nothing from the modern world, nothing. There's just shells, stones, stuff that's been woven, it's clearly, there's nothing there from the modern world whatsoever. And I'm sat there and I'm actually doing a hand drill fire at the time. I need to get a fire going. So I'm rubbing some sticks together on a little baseboard. And these two hikers come kind of like wandering sort of through, and they kind of wander through, and then they sort of turn around and they look at me. And it was like the best double, the double take. Like, they did like a double, triple take, because their subconscious mind had obviously gone, like, oh my God, that really does look like a proper caveman. Like, that dude could be. And they were like, I don't know whether to stay and ask him, like, oh my God, what are you doing? How long have you been out here? Are you all right? Or let's run because he might eat us. And they chose that, let's run because he might eat us. So that was brilliant.
So something I remember conversing with you about, which I can't remember the detail of it, but you said something about how through your understanding of primitive skills, you got this view of how, as humans, we're interconnected with the very fabric of how stuff like fireworks and our ability to integrate with nature. I was wondering if I could get your fresh take on that again.
Yeah, no worries. So obviously, before I even got into primitive skills, I was already on like a journey of like curiosity. Like I almost remember being a young child and walking around in life and almost like expecting to like, to look up to an adult and kind of, are you actually going to tell me like what's going on? Do you know what I mean? Like no one's actually told me yet, like who we really are and where we're in this place, and no one's actually really given me like any kind of answer that I'm, quite content with. So I was always on a bit of a searching journey anyway before I discovered all these sort of skills. But when I started learning all these skills, that's when, you start thinking about fire, for instance. The mainstream view is that we discovered fire. It was almost like a bit of an accident along the way, and we discovered it, and we've done this with it. Is where when you actually in survival and you realize just how important fire really is, you actually realize that as a human being, you can't live without it. Or maybe there would be a very small tribe of humans that could live in a tiny little region in the world where it's warm and you don't need to make clothes, and you don't really need to do too much with fire, and you basically can survive without it. But it's very, to move around and to have many skills, you just need fire. Like it's very difficult to live without it. Like staying warm, drying things out, preserving food, curing clay pots, smoking hides for preservation, smoking food for preservation, um, just like, cutting through wood, light, just, you just need fire for so much stuff to do with survival. So you just start to think, well, hold on a minute, like, I just don't think we discovered it because, we have got hands and this is exactly what we need to make fire. And when you learn about making fire, you have like, so a bow drill and a hand drill, pretty similar, but one's just using a cord instead of just using your hands to generate the friction and the movement. But like you even have a small spindle, which looks like a male part, and then that goes into a baseboard, which funnily enough looks like a female receiving part. And with a male component and a female component together, they create the life, fire life. Is it an accident? Fire was the ability for fire to be a thing was obviously already existed. So I started to think, is fire really an accident? It's quite a coincidence, isn't it? That wood, what grows out of the ground everywhere, just so happens to burn. Do you know what I mean? Imagine if wood was made out of a kind of molecular construct that didn't burn. It means, well, you wouldn't be able to have fire. So that's kind of like the perfect material to make fire with and make tools and fire. And we've got hands to make fire. And that was just one tiny thing. Then I started like when I got into hunting and starting to tan leather and started to work with hides, I started to be a bit like, the fact that the hide, when you take a hide off an animal, it comes off perfectly pretty, they're quite hard to pull off, but nonetheless, they come off perfectly is where life could have accidentally randomly made it in a way where no, it's fused to the flesh underneath. It doesn't come off. And when you mix it with tree bark, no, evolution didn't do that. It didn't turn it into leather. But what I learned is that an animal hide comes off perfectly. And when you mix that with tree bark, it makes leather, like proper, like it makes proper leather. The tannic acid in the bark bonds with the fiber structure of the collagen and turns it into a product that, like I said before, unless human beings are going to live in a tiny little region somewhere warm, you ain't going nowhere without nothing on your feet. Imagine walking around anywhere with nothing on your feet. Like it ain't happening. Walking around without clothes on, like the ability to, have rope and to tie things together and lash stuff and make bags. You need leather. You have to have it. It's, the animals provide everything for us. They give us the meat, they give us the fat. There's loads of stuff you can do with fat, soap and other stuff. They give us the hide, which you can make rope, shoes, clothing, containers, shelters. So all this stuff I'm learning, I'm starting to go, hold on a minute, like all of this things is working out way too perfectly for it to all just be like a random accident, if you know what I mean. Because we're kind of told that everything evolved and that there's no kind of like orderness, intelligence, design, whatever you want to call it, that we're meant to believe that everything's a kind of a bit of an accident and that everything is the result of struggle. As where from these skills, I'm learning that no, actually everything is clearly got quite an incredible intelligence behind it. Like you take a squirrel, for instance, a squirrel is perfectly designed to live in a tree. If you take the squirrel out of the tree and throw it in the sea, it isn't going to do very well because it's not designed to do that. It's a squirrel and it's not a whale. And do you know what I mean? I started to like think to myself, hold on a minute, I'm not really sure if I'm going along with this whole notion of that, that everything comes from an accident or whatever, whatever, big bang, an explosion, and everything struggled and to survive to get the way it is. I'm learning completely differently to that. That actually, there's clearly like something behind everything that we're experiencing. It's very clever, not accidental. Like I say, you chuck a squirrel in the sea, it will die. It won't evolve fast enough to stay alive and create, well, like the next part of life. So yeah, these skills have like really taught me that, life's not an accident. There's something to it, and how just connected in nature. Like for instance, we wee nitrogen, we poo phosphorus, and human beings just have fires and that leaves potassium behind. So, like, what are the chances of us leaving the three major elements that plants need to be healthy? Do you know what I mean? Like, is that another one of these incredible accidents that, leaves life in this, like, incredibly complex, amazing way that it functions perfectly? So, yeah.
So would you say that you're a coincidence theorist, or would you say you're more of a creationist or something else, maybe?
Yeah, so I now, from spending plenty of time out in nature, which obviously when you spend lots of time in nature, especially on your own, there's no distractions. I'm almost in a meditative state all the time. When you're hunting, you have to be so aware, especially when you're hunting deer, because even one wrong thought, one wrong emotion, one tiny stick that you stand on and the stick's dry and it snaps, they hear it, they're gone. And yeah, I could have just spent like 5 hours, maybe more, 3/4 of a day stalking up onto a deer to get near to it. And one wrong move, bang, it's all over. So you have to be so, so on it. Just like the way nature is. I used to have a Siamese cat, my cat Elrond, and I pick him up and I'm like stroking him. And he's like, you can just tell he's safe, he's in bliss, he has no reason to be on it now. Like, let down your guard and just relax. But no, like I'll have him, and I assume that he's enjoying the relaxed moment because he's safe. One little rustle in the bushes, he's on it. He's so on it, so aware. So from spending lots of time in nature, it's making me extremely aware. I'm in this meditative state, so I'm actually, I've got a lot of time to think now. Okay, I'm thinking about life, and I'm thinking about all the stuff I've done and learning and trying to kind of like work all these coincidences. And so from spending and I've lots of time, I'm pretty dedicated. I'm like, I would like to know the truth about life. Thank you very much, because I'm not happy with what I've been told. I'm not happy what I've heard. And, I'm a pretty dedicated guy and I've got enough time. I'm going to have a good old think about it and see if I can work it out. And from spending all this time in nature, yeah, I've now come to the knowing that, yeah, life's not an accident. It's definitely part of creation. I haven't gone down like a kind of religious route myself. I see that like in nature, is part of creation. We should live in harmony with it. Therefore, like nature is sacred, and I want to live close to nature, and I want to live in a way that doesn't damage it. Because the way that we're living now, pretty much everything we do is at the cost of nature. And I personally myself, I don't agree with that. I think that life isn't a random accident in time, and it should be respected, and it is sacred. Yeah, and that's basically come, from me spending lots of time in nature and just studying it, just studying nature and going, this is not an accident. Like evolution, like does not, in my mind, it's a flawed theory, completely flawed. I believe in adaptation. Things adapt. If I walk with bare shoes, no shoes on for long enough, my feet will get tough. If I train my muscles get stronger. Like same with your mind. If you train your mind, intelligent, you're not born with a certain level of intelligence. You can train your mind and you will get more intelligent. That's something else I learned, like I'm learning all of these skills, and it's problem solving. That's all you're doing generally with like when you're out surviving and doing primitive skills, you're problem solving all the time. I'm trying to get a fire going. Why isn't it working? Is my baseboard too hard for the spindle above? Like this is how you create fire, for instance. You're rubbing two materials together. If the one on the top is really, really hard and the one on below is too soft, you just drill a hole straight through it and no heat is created. And it's the same as the other way around. If the bottom bit is really, really hard and the top bit's not so hard, then this bit will just get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you will not have fire and you won't create heat. But if you've got the right combination of hardness, the baseboard just needs to be a little bit harder than the spindle because the spindle has a smaller diameter. And then when you press those together in a spinning motion, it creates so incredible amount of heat that it ends up igniting the little pile of dust that you've made of the materials rubbing together. And, all this stuff I'm doing, learning how to soften a hide, learning how to hunt, learning how to weave a basket, all this kind of intricate, I'm folding that around that way, that's holding that. All of these things, they basically make you, a problem solver. You're like looking for solutions. It gets your brain going, and it just makes you, you know, just good at doing stuff. Once I'd spent a long period of time working with stone tools, the moment I had a steel tool in my hand again, oh my God, mate. I've got a pretty good skill with my hands. I've been making stuff my whole life, but from doing stuff with stone tools and then going back to steel tools, oh my God, it was like when I used to play basketball. We used to wear weighted vests and play with an extra large basketball. And then when you take the vest off and you've got a normal sized basketball in your hand, you're like, oh my God, it feels like a tennis ball in a massive hoop. And now I can fly because I've not got this weighted vest on. So like all of this stuff was just, it's just like making me like more of a problem solver and just good at figuring things out. Like, and supposed to, having to like get knowledge from somebody else, I want to learn this. I need to go and ask somebody else where to get that knowledge from. Is where I've been at a stage now where it's like, right, I want to learn something. Okay, right, this is what I want to learn about. Okay, let's take computers, for instance. I don't really know that much about computers and I'm not that interested because I'm not really that into technology. But let's say for some reason I decided, right, okay, I want to learn how to become a computer programmer. So what I've got to do is I just, need to learn the information of how to program. So basically, I need to just learn what buttons to press. I don't need to basically like have some kind of like nerdy implant that makes me more intelligent so I can now understand how to use a computer. This is like one of the things I've learned, like intelligence and learning how to do something. You can do it. It's just a matter of time and learning how to do it. It's not that you don't have the intelligence to do it. Like I'm trying to, how can I explain it? Like for instance, I believe that we've kind of put intelligence on this pedestal. So if a scientist, before he does any experiments, he knows nothing about what he's doing the experiments about. Once they perform loads of experiments and then they go and give a good speech about what they've learned and the experiments they've done, you could perceive them as an intelligent person. Like, look at all this information, look at all this stuff that they know. And like, we believe that that's like what makes some of the intelligence. But they've got a mind to memorize the information and they're a bit conscious being to observe and do these experiments. Surely that's what the real intelligence is. You know what I mean? We're already gifted with the ability of having a mind, having eyes, having the ability to perceive life. Surely, like, that's what true intelligence really is. Like, intelligence is actually already us, is where we're now mistaking intelligence for a human being that is like a doctor or a astronaut or someone like, oh my God, they're so intelligent and amazing because they're a scientist. And it's like, why? I could learn exactly what that scientist is learned if I wanted to. I'm just not interested in it. It would just be a matter of time and a matter of willpower of do I want to do it enough? But we've put like intelligence on this pedestal now of like, we're amazing. We've got all this knowledge. Science is amazing. The modern world is amazing. And if our ancestors were primitive, Stone Age retards clanging stones together, like this is our perception now. As where from what I've learned is like, no, our ancestors were amazing. For them to survive in the environment they did, they would have to be highly on it. Like you could say like they'd have to be really intelligent, but no, what they needed was awareness. Like awareness is the king, not intelligence. Like they already had that. They had amazing awareness to basically survive like what they were gone through. So like that's what I find extremely frustrating now of like being in this world and everyone's like, oh my God, AI is amazing, technology is amazing. Like we're at this pinnacle of like human history. And it's like, what? So we're destroying the planet. There's like child sex trafficking, everyone's ill, mental illness is absolutely rife. Do you know what I mean? Like wars, like absolutely just off the chart. Everything's messed up. Everyone, like most people I know, are like struggling, stressed, and like this is the pinnacle of human history, is it? And our ancestors were retards, and yet I'm actually living the way that our ancestors used to live, and I'm having like the time of my life. I'm having an adventure. Like I feel so alive. Everything that I'm doing, I get massive fulfillment out of because when the things that you really need, you're providing for yourself. Like when you're really, really hungry and you go and get food, my God, do you really, really appreciate it? Like when you've got no pairs of socks and you end up spending like 3 days weaving a pair of socks out of some eucalyptus bark, and then you've got a pair of socks and like your feet aren't rubbing, you're not in your moccasins anymore. Like you don't know like the joy from like a simple thing of that. Is where like our world we live in now, everything that you really need, you just press a button and you go and get it. You just press a button and it's there. So like our big conundrums now is what do we do with our time? Like everyone needs to be distracted because no one feels right. And it's just because we're not living how we're supposed to live. Like I say, you take a squirrel and you throw it in Tesco's, it ain't going to be happy. And I see that is in our life. We're living this way. And don't get me wrong, there's some awesome stuff that we can experience in this particular modern era that we're living in. You know what I mean? I'm 47 now. I was born 79. I've been through like the night. I've experienced incredible music. Like the movies back in the 90s were amazing. Like I've experienced some amazing stuff because of the period of history that I'm living in. But just all I'm saying is that we're the way that we used to live is perceived as backwards and stupid, and we can't go there. We can't go back there. We can't lose everything that we've got now. And yeah, I don't see that what we've got now is as amazing as what everyone thinks it is. All AI is just a artificial version of what we are. Like, we didn't invent an aeroplane. We looked at a bird and went, oh, that's clever. We'll make an aeroplane. We just copied nature. We've just copied what has already been created. But we just think, oh my God, AI is amazing. And yet we see us as like, we're not enough to most people.
Do you think modern day people lack this awareness you speak of?
Massively, massively, because we don't need it. For instance, any human being that lives in an environment where there's animals that are around that can kill you. So if you live in an environment where there's bears, wolves, like even wild boar where I was camping there, you got to be on it. You can get messed up. Um, so yeah, you live in an environment where there's things that are going to kill you. It will make you aware. Like it will make you really aware. So if there's no dangerous animals around, if the floor's perfectly flat, you've got a pair of shoes on, so there's like, you don't really have to look where you're going. And also, our society wants us to be numb. It doesn't want us to be like aware and be able to see fraud. Like that's the last thing the government want is a population that's like can just basically see bullshit, like spot it like that. That's what living in nature has done. You spend a lot of time being highly tuned in. My ability to tune into my surroundings and also my discernment because I'm aware, I'm able to basically be in the present moment rather than my mind distracting me or perceiving life through the filter of the beliefs that I have in my mind, like cognitive dissonance, for instance. People see life through all of the things that they have in their mind. And you can't have that basically when you need to be completely present and totally aware in nature. And yeah, so the modern world does not make us more aware. As a matter of fact, it numbs our awareness. It numbs, we withdraw. And same with the modern world now. We're so overloaded and so overstimulated that, we draw in. We're so traumatized, we need to be distracted. We're so unfulfilled, we need to be distracted. So yeah, like living in that environment, yeah, it does make you highly aware. And the world we live in now, yeah, we don't need that same awareness. So yeah, the environment shapes us.
Many people would, if they were to comprehend the idea of living without electricity, might feel a sense of fear if they were put with that idea. I would like to know though, what have you noticed in you and your family's life, the health benefits of living in a more harmonious way?
Health benefits. Well, for a living, and clean water. So I'm definitely drinking clean water. I'm breathing in clean air. I'm not wrapped in plastic, toxic clothing, which is, poisoning me. I'm not so worried about like my smell, which means I don't have to like spray. I mean, I wouldn't do anyway, but everyone's like poisoning themselves with aluminium and all this other jargon. The food, mate, that when you're eating out of nature, this the perfect diet, isn't it? Everyone's so confused about diet these days. I don't know what to eat. Should it be a vegan? Should it be this? Should it be a that? In nature, if you don't eat what's around you, you will die. And if you eat what's from nature, generally, it's good food. Like vegetables don't naturally grow in nature, so that the plants that you're eating are less hybridized. They're not so bumped up with all these plant defense mechanisms, not so high in all the polyunsaturated fat, which we know is not good for our cells. It's highly, highly toxic. So yeah, living out in nature, getting a super good diet, mostly an animal-based diet, which I personally myself think is the best diet. The nutrition that you get from animal meats is instantly bioavailable. The fat is a lot better condition. It's more of a saturated fat, so it's less likely to oxidize, which is really, really important. And obviously, the animals themselves as well, that the diet they're eating, unless they're left alone, most animals these days are fed and something that comes in a packet, which a lot of it ain't no good. Um, Living out in nature, there's no Wi-Fi. Most of the time I was away from phone signals. I haven't got a phone on me, so I'm not getting radiated. I've never, I've never been somebody to like take medications and stuff anyway. I've never been like that. And you have to learn how to take care of yourself. If I get ill, I want to know how to get myself better. If I cut myself really, really badly, I want to know how I can treat it. If I get an infection, I want to know how to take care of that. So like living that way, it's, I feel loads healthier from living like that. And then the knowledge and the understanding of how to look after myself that's given me. Yeah, I feel great. And my children as well, for instance, they don't watch TV, they don't watch TV adverts, they're not kind of shown all this stuff all the time, which they start thinking about, I want this, I want that. I think it's definitely a healthier way of life. Well, I'm 47 now, I'm 48 in August, and you know, I feel way better than most people I know who are like in their 20s, and they're living more of a modern life, and people look ill, mate. People look sick. People look really, really sick, and they're living that way. And I've been living a completely different way for about 25, 26 years, mate. I don't even know, 27 years. And yeah, I feel good, mate. I feel fit, strong, and healthy. So yeah, it's obviously doing something.
That's good to hear. You are looking very well, I have to say, and you're right. People are suffering big time with these. I like to call them food-looking substances. But have you always been? I mean, the term awake gets thrown around a lot, I guess. But have you always been this way, or was there like a pivotal moment in your life which pulled you out of the conditioning from the system?
Yeah, I mean, it was it was a bit of a slower process. I didn't have just like a sudden massive zang. Um, so like I said before, because I'm dyslexic, when I was at school, immediately like the way I experienced authority and teachers and stuff like that, I didn't like school. So immediately I'm being sent to this place. I don't like it. I'm like, why am I here? I want to just be at home, sat in the tree. or, set up the garden, making ponds and waterfalls. Like, what am I even doing here? And the way that these people were trying to, give the information that they were giving to me, I wasn't into it. The way that they're telling it, I'm not inspired. You're not explaining to me the reason why I want to learn this. So even from a young age, I'm, starting to like learn, like, I'm not into authority. I don't like this whole school thing. I'm not into like wearing this uniform and doing all this sort of stuff. Time's gone on a bit more. And then unfortunately, when I did get into my teens, because of going through that experience, it's knocked me out a bit. So as I got into a bit later teens, I did alcohol and, I did get into drugs a bit and stuff like that. And then it was only like later on that I then started to just think a little bit differently. I remember the movie Fight Club. I remember learning some good stuff from there. Like there's like lines in that movie. It's like, we work jobs we hate to buy shit we don't need. And there's stuff in there that I was like, oh, that's so true. And then obviously, like in the UK, we've got some mushrooms that grow in the field once every year, and they call them magic mushrooms, and they are, like some people have a bad trip. I didn't. I took some of them, and I have to say, the effect of taking them, it was good. It really it just showed me so much stuff which is nonsense. So I did them a few times. That's changing the way that I'm thinking. And then I had a friend called Phil. He was what we would call awake. He was reading David Icke books. He was doing like all sorts of stuff. I getting into surfing. I'm hanging out with him. He's chatting to me a bit. He's like started to give me a few books. And the something that happened as well is so from being into surfing, I was down Sennin Cove, and then my wife now, I see a lifeguard, and I'm like, oh, who's that over there? She's nice. And so from surfing is how I met Holly. We started going out with Die Hard Surfing, getting into surfing. So surfing is a really cool thing, standing up on a wave, and like I was quite happy, met Holly. I'm really, really happy. And because I'm now happy and I'm now in love and I'm starting to like read all these books and stuff, I'm starting to go, something ain't right. Everyone's too miserable. Things is like, life's just a bit like everything's just too difficult. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't just like go and build a house if you want to. You can't just like do this. You got a sign here. You got to stand on this square. You got to jump through this hoop. If you don't cut the grass the right height in millimeters, Karen's going to complain. Just and I've never been into like nonsense. Like I'll explain later why. I never really understood why. When I was a young boy, all I ever really wanted to do was just live simply. Just leave me alone. I just wanted it's just I've never been into the nonsense and the paperwork and ticking the boxes. It's never ever been my thing. And I've never been into technology and sci-fi either. That's not been my thing. I've always been like a nature boy. So, when I'm starting to learn all this stuff, I'm like, yeah, this is true. So like I'm in love now, and I'm starting to go, yeah, right, something ain't right. And then this guy, Phil, I do remember he gave me a particular book. I think it was a David Icke book. And I read that in detail. So I read the beginning. As I'm reading the beginning about, the bankers, the corporations, how they sort of work together, power's been gained over years and stuff, these big, powerful families, and, they'd like to shape society and blah. I'm like, you know what? I don't have a difficult time understanding that that's actually a fact. I was like, yeah, do you know what? That clearly makes sense. And from the information I was given, I was like, yeah, that's clearly, there was enough well-researched stuff. At the time, I was like, I'm not sure about reptilians, but, I'm open-minded. We'll have a look into it. But one thing I was like damn sure on was like, yeah, big corporate interests, money, banking, powerful families, they've gained power over time. I was like, yeah, that's definitely going on. And of course it would be in their interest to pollute the food and make people sick and, then control the pharmaceutical industry. You can make tons of money. They've got loads of money. They've got their power. I did not have an issue with like that being a thing. Human beings, I've seen, basically like how money and power can completely overtake people. I didn't have an issue with that there is evil in this world. I didn't, I'd seen stuff from growing up that I was like, yeah, evil clearly exists. Is where I come in contact with people now that because they have a hard time emotionally dealing with the fact that evil exists, they'll kind of like program themselves that like no evil doesn't exist. It just we can live in this like all lovely lovey-dovey way. We just need to deal with all of our emotional shit from being young. So yeah, along that journey, discovering like, okay, the world is not how I see, like, so then I started doing like stepping stones, basically. Okay, the world's corrupt, right? I need to learn about health. I need to, I learn how to look after myself. I need to learn, this knowledge basically that's being taken away from me to make me feel powerless, to enslave me and trap me in like what we call the matrix. And then obviously all the stuff I'm learning about bushcraft is freeing me from the matrix. And then all the stuff that I'm seeing that they're trying to fulfill is like making it harder for me to do the things which I can see are making me free. They want to take animals away from us. They want us to live on like a vegan plant-based diet, is where I'm learning like, oh my God, if I've got animals, I can be completely free because I can make everything that I need. I can have an incredible food source. Like animals to me are freedom completely. Like if you've just got a few basic tools and animals and in a natural environment, you can be completely free without any Karens or anyone coming along going, no, no, you need this. No, no, you must have that. You must need this. So yeah, it's a combination of all the stuff I'd learned and then all the stuff I can see that they're trying to do. It's this battle of trying to get us, trying to, basically control us.
So it was more of a slow burner then, if you will. It wasn't like
Yeah,
a
slow
define.
burn, slow. Yeah, seeing things from younger, this, that, yeah, slow. Then me and Holly, we're together and we're carrying on look at things and like I said, once I'd learned how corrupt the world was, I started to go, do you know what? I'm not going to do the getting a mortgage and saving up for a pension because I do not have faith in the system anymore. It doesn't have my interest at heart, so I'm not going to put my faith in the system. I'm not saving up for a pension. I'm not going to get a mortgage and do this work till I'm old and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that. I don't have faith in that system anymore. So what I want to know is how I can learn how to be free, how I can stand on my own 2 feet, how I can look after my health so that I'm not so sort of fearful of like, oh my God, if I don't have a pension and all that when I'm older, I'm going to be completely screwed. It's a very fear-based system of if you don't do this and have that, then you're going to be screwed. And also, like, also comes back to the notion of if life's an accident, you don't have like faith in it. Therefore, like the body is because body's part of a random accident. It surely it can't heal itself that well. I see that when people around me are getting old, like their health's bad. So I've got to get ready for this moment of when I'm older and I'm in pain and I need like have money so somebody can care for me. Is where like I'm like, nah, I don't believe that. I think life's actually incredible, and if you look after yourself and you keep yourself strong, you can be fit and healthy into your older years. And also, I was a bit like, well, let's say I do get to my old age, but I've actually lived. Like I've not just gone to work and done and lived a life that of most people where they don't want to do it. They haven't lived an adventure. They haven't lived their passion. I didn't want to live like that and then get to the point when I am old and I can actually like do what I want, but then actually be just too broken to do it. I'd much rather live how I want to live. And then okay, fair enough. I'm not got tons of money at the moment. I live pretty simple. But if I do get to the point where like, okay, I haven't got any money and there's no one to look after me, fine. Okay, I'll deal with it then. But at least I've lived. So now I'm not in this broken, traumatic, massively regretful state where I can't let go. I'm happy to let go. I know life's creation. I'm happy for the next journey and I've lived. So, that's how living that way and, the combination of like getting to that point where I'm learning about life and studying about life and learning about, you know, the way that we're living, like, I'm not doing that. I'm living a different way. So yeah, it was a very, very slow process. It took a long time. I've been what you would call awake for like 27 years. I started really questioning things when I was like 19, 20. So it has been a long time and it has been a long path. I didn't just suddenly like do something and then go, oh my God, that's it. My Kundalini's awaken and blah, blah, blah. It was a slow process. You don't go from living in a flat to lighting fire with sticks and eating raw meat and wearing a loincloth, in a very short period of time. Like that is a big transition. And I know for most people, the notion of, walking out of a house and going outside and like eating plant food and doing stuff like that is just so like, yeah, it's so different for most people. We're incredibly domesticated. It's been a long time since human beings were using stone tools, and we've arrived at this moment now. It's been a very, very long time. All dogs come from wolves, and you look at chihuahuas and other dogs that we've bred now, you realize that they all come from wolves and how domesticated we've made dogs. Same with human beings. It's been a long journey. Our entire bone structure has physically changed because of the way we live our lives. Our minds and everything have adapted and changed over a very long period of time. So, yeah, for us, to go back like that, it's a difficult thing for people. But one thing I will say, it's still there, mate. It's not going anywhere. So when I've been teaching people lighting fire at workshops, I'll be teaching people from every walk of life. I got a surfer, I got a townie, I got a businessman, I've got, like the pot smoking hippie, I've got just the normal run of the mill grey man in society who's just average Joe, lives door to Jeff, and he's worked the same job his whole life, and he's got a Volvo, that I have all the walk of life in front of me, but yeah, I'm teaching them how to light fire, and you can see this thing, mate, inside them. They're like, yes, that, like, you just see it inside. They're like, oh my God, this is it. There's something inside them that says, yes, this is where I come from. This is who I really am. Like, I can just see it in everyone, mate. And I've never, ever seen that with anything else, where you've got all these different people and they're all like, oh my God, like to, these skills, man, like these are it. Like, so from learning these skills, like the best way I've had these skills explained to me is they are the doorway to the earth. Now I've learned these skills, I can walk out into nature, and nature's not like an alien place to me. So like people when they go camping now, their rucksack with their water bottle, their water purifier, their sleeping bag, and all that, it's the same as an astronaut needing all of his stuff to go to space. Not that I believe in that anyway, but it's the same. You can't go to the bottom of the ocean without a scuba diving tank and all the gear. You can't do it. And it's the same now. We're so alien from our environment, we almost need all this like kit to go into it. But we actually do have the ability to go out into nature with nothing, and we are so part of it, and it's so perfectly designed for human beings to live in harmony with it. It's all there for us. The stones are there for the tools. The bones are there for the tools. We've got fire, wood for building structures, wood for burning. The sinew in the animal for making incredibly strong cordage and bowstrings, like the plant fibers for weaving things, for making bags, for making thread, for stitching stuff together, like everything. The clay in the ground for building shelters, the clay in the ground for building containers. Like it's all there already. Everything was there for human beings to live an incredible life. And our modern world, we're made to believe that our ancestors, it was struggle, it was dark, it was hard, it was dumb, it was dark ages, it was old, and we're not going back. We're never going back. We can't live like that. And I personally myself I don't believe that. And I think that mindset is what is destroyed the world, destroying the world, and probably will destroy it in the end. Because everything we're doing is at the cost of nature. Everything. Like when people get money, like Andrew Tate, for instance, like he says he believes in God and he wants to wants to like live like, with sort of God's will or whatever. And it's like, yeah, okay then. But like every time you buy a new sports car, that sports car does not grow on the sports car tree. The same as the solar panel doesn't grow on the solar panel tree. Those minerals, those materials had to be taken from the earth, probably with enormous machinery. The enormous machinery had to be made in a big factory. The big factory had to be made somewhere. All of these things destroyed nature to be made. So don't tell me you love God and then go and buy something which I have no idea how many acres of the natural environment had to be destroyed to make a sports car. I don't know. But this is my conundrum, is that everything that we're doing is just destroying nature. And I don't want to live like that. I want to be, I now have an understanding that life is sacred. And I don't want to, I think I want to give it respect, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm trying to live with as minimal footprint as I can. And I know people will be watching this going, well, I'm watching you're on a phone now, you've got a phone. So I ain't perfect. And I'll totally admit it. Do you know what I mean? Like completely. But I'm just trying. I'm trying to do as best as I can and trying to look after the world that I can. And that's what I want to pass on to my children, is that pass these skills on to keep them live. Because unfortunately, a lot of these skills I've learned, this knowledge has to be passed on physically. There's so many skills that have been learned that actually need to be passed on. Like a lot of things in life, you're born with. You're born with the ability to be aware. You're born with a mind with the ability to understand things. We're already gifted with amazing things, but some things that are learned through the human experience need to be passed on physically. And that's what our tribes had a long time ago with the elders. They were the knowledge keepers, and there was things that were passed on that were incredibly sacred, incredibly sacred. We're losing all of it. As soon as you give a plastic bucket to a tribe, it's not that long before then, we don't need to weave these things anymore. And before you know it, a skill that could have taken generations to learn is lost within a year. This modern world is doing a lot of damage. And don't get me wrong, yeah, we've done some amazing stuff, but at the same time, we're still killing everything.
That's powerful,
Yeah.
powerful, powerful stuff. I remember the day that I met you, and it was during lockdown, and I'd been invited by someone to come down to the local fire where many people were attending to sort of discuss some solutions. That was what I was given the premise of it for this sort of Rona episode that was going on. And I remember hearing some people just thinking, oh my goodness, like, you guys are getting very stressed out. And then you rock up late, and then someone was like, John, do you want to say something? And then you were just like, yeah. I think the first thing he says is, yeah, I saw a pheasant on the way over here. I shot it with a slingshot, and it was a headshot. And I was just like, who's this guy? And then later on that day, we ended up conversing in the van I was living in at the time for several hours until the early hours of the morning. And one of the things that you said to me, which was like a massive piece in the sort of knowledge database for me, was you were going on about how basically the invention of steel was the tipping point, if you will. And that stuck with me.
Yeah, it's I personally myself can sort of trace a lot of the damage that I'm talking about. Steel has is responsible for a lot of that. And I'll totally admit it now, like I heard it somewhere else. It actually wasn't one of these epiphanies that I had when I was just sat out in the woods on my own for ages. I was actually listening to a recording of Tom Brown Jr. and I heard Tom say these words when he said, just that was it. Somebody, yeah. So Tom was teaching a bowl carving workshop with somebody, and somebody's got a metal crook knife, and they're carving this bowl, and it's supposed to be like a Native American sacred bowl crafting workshop, and no one's supposed to be using modern tools. And Tom says to this guy, "Can you please put that away? That is not the workshop for this. That is not, an ancestral tool. That tool that you hold in your hand is steel, and steel is driven by darkness." And I was like, what? And at the time as well, like, I've got a bit of a thing for knives. Do you know what I mean? Like, just, I'm a man, knives are cool, man. And also, knives are extremely useful. One of the most useful tools you can possibly have. So when I heard this, I'm like, oh my God, Tom's having a dig at knives and steel. What? Like, I always thought, I thought, oh my God, this guy's like, he's like designed a knife and like now he's having a dig at steel. What? So like that's where I basically heard it first. That's when it started to get me to think, yeah, you know what? Actually, so we used to use stone tools. Then we've been, we've obviously like for a long time we've been using copper. We know that we went into the Bronze Age. We're obviously using copper. Then we learned if we mix zinc and copper together, it makes bronze. And bronze is slightly harder than copper, which can make better tools. And then it also made stronger weapons, like stronger swords. We entered the Bronze Age because of that. Yeah, bronze is pretty cool material. And then obviously from bronze, we're using iron and we're casting. And then slowly from that, then we're mixing more of the minerals we're pulling out of the ground. And then, dark ages come along, forging, blacksmithing, and like the Dark Ages, for instance, that was when there's a period of time when it was the Dark Ages, and I'm keeping my forging secrets from you because if my sword is stronger than yours, when we go to war, I'm more powerful than your army. That's where that starts to creep in. So, like from the like creation of steel, it's basically making more deadly weapons which gives potentially more power to somebody else. Because if you think years and years ago, it was very difficult to gain more power over people, as where through modern technology, one human being, the power that one human being can wield now, because of technology and because of money, is phenomenal. Is where years ago, you couldn't really have an incredible amount of power over people. Nature basically kept the human psyche in check. If you didn't work together, you died. If you take like a wolf pack, for instance, you have the old and the sick at the front. If there's any ambush, they will get taken out, which defends the rest of the pack. Behind that, you would have the strongest, youngest, and most aggressive wolves to then take on the next like form of power. Beyond that, you would have the women and the baby cubs. They're protected. Behind them, you have another strong fleet of wolves. And on his own, at the back, is the alpha male that's keeping an eye on absolutely everything. And years ago, we lived in a way where, we looked after each other. And I couldn't gain much power over you, apart from maybe physically dominating somebody, or because I've got a really good bow and arrow, maybe that makes me a little bit more powerful. But from the creation of steel, my weapon is now more dangerous than yours. I can now, from steel, make chains, locks. I can now make doors to lock something in somewhere. I can now forge steel to maybe make components to make more powerful weaponry like a catapult. I can now invent the wheel because I can wrap the wooden wheel in metal, which makes the wheel doesn't wear out. I can put an axle through it. Do you know what I mean? I can make hinges for doors. I can now make more digging tools, which enables me to dig more. I can now make an axe, so I can chop more trees down quicker. I can now make cook pots. And like, so steel basically was like the first way of developing tools, which gave us power, which changed our way of living, which changed the speed that we can, have an effect on nature. And from the creation of that, then we created more things. And then slowly, steel is basically the reason why we've got the modern world. Machinery, large buildings. If it wasn't for steel, we wouldn't have discovered plastic. If we didn't discover plastic and steel together, computers, the modern world, everything we see today is basically you can trace because we've discovered steel. You would never have cut down a massive 2,000-year-old tree if it wasn't for steel, because I don't see somebody chopping a tree down that size with a bronze axe. Mineral tools enabled us to, have a certain level of like, I can chop this tree down in a very inefficient way and make a shelter and keep our tribe looked after, which is, great. But this tool does not enable me to destroy and yield power over people. Is where once steel got to a certain hardness, that's when we really started to do damage to nature and to ourselves. And now, because of the result of steel in the modern world, if you've got loads of money and you've now got the use of technology with money, I'm sorry, but if you're mentally ill, like a lot of people are, you can do a lot of damage. So let's take Bill Gates, for instance. We put Bill Gates in an old primitive tribe. He's not going to be able to get up to all of the nonsense and damage that he is able to at the moment in our human history. I'm pretty sure actually, if Bill Gates was in a tribe a long time ago, they probably would have said, do you know what, Bill? If you don't kind of change your outlook on life, we're going to ask you to leave the tribe. And one of the most scariest things for a human being years ago was being exiled from a tribe. Because if you're now on your own, unless you were a scout like grandfather was, who taught Tom Brown Jr., you did not have the skills to be on your own in nature. Human beings needed to be in a tribe to survive well. It was only a very few, people within a tribe that had all the skills, to survive, which is, what I wanted to learn. I was just astounded by this guy who'd passed on the knowledge to Tom. I was like, I want to be like grandfather. I want to know all of it. I want to be able to be on my own and have all the knowledge of how to do it. As well, living in a tribe, that is ultimately what human beings need to continue, to generationally continue. We need to live in a tribe. And I know for a fact that the kind of psyches that human beings have in our modern world today, they wouldn't have had the ability to survive if they were on their own. And if you put them all together and tried to get them to function, no way, not a chance. And that's another reason why I kind of believe as well that, it's just why we're so messed up and why everything's so destructive. We don't need each other anymore to survive. If you've got money, you can just get everyone to do anything you want for you, and you don't need other people. And if you don't need other people, then you don't need good communication skills. You don't need to be aware. You don't need to have to be able to have manners, to communicate with people correctly so that you're clear, you're understood, you're not just pissing people off so people don't want to be around you. You know what I mean? You needed to have coherence for things to happen. Is where the world we're in now, you can be completely demonic, messed up, psychopathic, narcissistic, unconscious, unaware, with bad intentions, and guess what? Unfortunately, you can have massive influence like that. And as a matter of fact, you've heard the saying before, scum rises to the top. It does in our world today, mate. And that's why it's so messed up. You know what I mean? It's like all of that stuff, all of living that way, man. It's just showed me just why things are so messed up. So to me, I'm not confused because it's pretty clear to me. I understand where we come from, how human beings used to live, and I can look at what we're living through now, and I can understand now why things are the way they are. So yeah, I'm not confused. I'm not fused with a con, as I say.
So, if someone listening to this wanted to get into bushcraft, primitive skills, survival skills, what would you recommend their course of action be if they've never done anything like that before?
So my honest, yeah. Sorry, there's someone running behind, something running around me quite big. I don't know what it is, whether it's a large animal or whether it's a child. Um, but anyway, so the best advice I would give to somebody is, um, you know, coming from the way we're living now to going out and trying to live completely in nature with everything that you've made, it is going to take a long time. And unfortunately, as well, there's a lot of people out there that are going to give bad advice. So, obviously, you need to go in and get a rucksack and a knife and a water bottle, and you need just a few things, which is going to enable you to go and spend time out in nature, and maybe just learn a few skills, spend time out in nature, so you can just just be comfortable in that environment and start to connect with it again, because when you spend time in nature, you will quickly realize that you'll have a connection because you are part of it. but like, giving people advice without them almost like coming and doing a workshop, because I wasted years, mate, buying kit and then buying like another bit of kit and breaking that, and then like buying that head torch for 60 quid and that broke, buying another one and then that one breaks. And then eventually, I found like a petrol head torch and that worked, and I bought quite a lot of stuff. I spent a lot of time wasting, I spent a lot of money, basically, wasted a lot of money and wasted a lot of time on a load of shit. So I guess really the advice I need to say is like you need leather clothing to be in nature for an extended period of time. Most modern clothing doesn't last 5 minutes. It just breaks. So you need like leather clothing. You need to use wool. Wool keeps you warm even when it's wet. It's very tough. It doesn't make you feel hot and sweaty like plastics do. Leather is an incredible fabric. Like for instance, deerskin. I can pull this deerskin round the back of an angle grinding disc for 2 weeks continuous. Not that I'm going to do that and have done it, but I could do, and it won't shred through the hide. It'll just buff it up and make it soft. There ain't many fabrics that exist that are like that. Like this is an amazing material. It's so damn tough. You would only need two bits of leather clothes for you to last you the rest of your life. It's that good. So like leather's really, really good. Leather's really important. Using wool's really important. Getting a decent knife is really important. Having a water bottle, a container to carry liquid is really important. Having a water purifier in some way. But I'm going to be totally honest with people now. The chances for most human beings to change the way that they're living now and go and live like the extreme end of what I've done, where I'm wearing all my own clothes, I'm using stone tools, I'm making fire with a hand drill, which takes a long time to learn, and you're going to go and hunt like all your own food. Like that is not going to happen like in a couple of months. It just doesn't. It just takes time. It just does physically take time to learn. Same with anything, to actually learn, to get to the point of the level where you can make the music that you can. It's the same with anything, Nobody can do a double backflip on a BMX in like one day. It takes time. Nobody understands what they do about computers overnight. Everything takes time. So you're not going to learn to live like an ancestor in a very short amount of time. It takes time. So the best advice I can give to people is buy some leather clothing, because that just will last. If you can find like a handmade leather rucksack, because you just do need a bag to carry things. Human beings need tools. We're not like animals. We don't have claws growing out the ends of our fingers. We don't have fur. We actually do need to make things for ourselves, like which can look like a bit of a hindrance, but actually it's a gift, because from being able to make our own tools and being able to make these things, we are now the most adaptable species on the planet, which means we can survive in pretty much any environment. That's why most animals are very isolated. Whales are in the sea, squirrels are up on trees, lions are in the jungle, and things are basically very only built for their own environment, which kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about evolution. It can't be, because everything is perfectly designed to be where it's supposed to be. When you take that animal, take a lion, stick it in the Arctic, it doesn't evolve, it just dies. Take a whale out of the sea and stick it in the jungle, it doesn't evolve, it just dies. But coyotes, for instance, coyotes are a very adaptable species. So you find coyotes in many, many, many different environments. And human beings are absolutely everywhere, mostly now, more so because of modern technology, but from being able to make tools, because we've got hands, this enabled us to be highly, highly adaptable, which is why we're everywhere. So the more skills that you've got in tool making and survival will make you incredibly adaptable. But yeah, advice to like literally give to people who are watching now, who are literally in a modern building, watching a phone, wearing modern clothing. You've just got to get some, try and buy something that's well made. But it is difficult. Something I would, I'm a very busy man, but something I'd like to do at some point is, just like have a website that basically says, buy this bag, buy this water bottle, buy this water purifier, buy this knife, buy this head torch, buy this kind of thread, buy this kind of rope, buy this type of axe, buy this type of knife sharpener. Because, there's only a certain things that you really need. You need an axe, you need a knife, you need a water container of different sizes, you need clothing, you need socks, you need decent footwear. Like most people, some people get into prepping. Prepping's quite big nowadays. Um, you know, if you want to get prepped, you need shoes. Most people don't think about it. Everyone's storing up food, storing up CEO radios, storing up solar panels, but they ain't got many pairs of shoes. And from what I've learned is most of this stuff that people are prepping and saving up, most of it fucking breaks, mate. It just breaks. Like solar panels, technology, it's always going wrong. Always. Technology just annoys me. Everything, built-in obsolescence, everything built to break. That's why I ended up making all my own stuff because it annoys me that everything is built to break. Most of the kit I used to use, it just breaks. Most outdoor clothing that people use to get up Mount Everest, yeah, it will get you up Everest, but it will not keep you alive in nature for an extended period of time because the UV will destroy it. Thorny bushes will rip it to bits. If it gets near fire, it will melt. So my advice for if someone does want to get into bushcraft and get into spending time in nature, or if they're like, yeah, society is a little bit, unstable now. If the power, like Portugal and Spain, for instance, yeah, okay, the power's off for 4 days, it came back on. But if the power stayed off for 2 weeks, things are going to get a bit messy, I would say. And that's the thing, the power legitimately, it's not being a doomer. I've believed for a long time that if for something, whatever, I don't know what it could be, but if there was a big earthquake or a big tsunami or something, like AI, for instance, once AI gets to the point where it starts causing mischief, AI could turn off the power. AI could cause such disruption to the modern world, the power goes off, and guess what? It ain't coming back on. And if that happens, if you do want to survive, which I would think a lot of people would, because the inbuilt will to survive in human beings is extremely powerful, is very powerful. So yeah, if you do want to get a bit prepared, then yeah, store up some food, get some shoes, get a water purifier, buy some containers, get a knife, and like it's about that headshot on the pheasant, get a catapult because a catapult is a very good weapon because like in the UK it's one of the only legal weapons we're allowed. Fits in your pocket, not many moving parts to go wrong, and they are good. They are very, very good. There's a guy on YouTube who puts multiple catapult bands on the sides of the catapult, which makes it to the same level of power as basically a real handgun. He's shooting ballistic gel and it's doing the same damage as a 9mm handgun. So yeah, I keep a few catapults around. I can hunt with them. And also, unfortunately, we just live in a period of time where they're just, people are messed up. They are, before I unmessed myself up because I used to be, a out of balance, disrupted human beings. That's why I drank a lot of alcohol because I was not in a harmonious state. And I just wanted to kind of like knock myself out as well. I don't want to do that now. I want to do like the opposite of that. I want to tune in more. But unfortunately, there's lots of people who are walking around now. They have dangerous ideologies. They're in such a messed up state. They might want to harm other people. And because of that, I think you need to learn to be aware. You need to learn how to look after yourself, and you need to watch out for darkness or whatever you want to call it. And it ain't going to get any better. Look at the knife crime in the UK. The economy's getting worse. I don't see that. I think at some point, it's going to get a little bit rocky. I mean, for instance, you take all those people that got stabbed on London Bridge a while ago. If people were a lot more aware, they would have seen the guy coming. If people knew martial arts, if people were strong and fit, there would have probably been a lot less damage these days. So it is quite difficult just within a short space of time to say to somebody, to give people the correct information. It's not so easy without, people coming and spending a decent amount of time and going, look at this, look at that, do this and do that. Um, but yeah, you need shoes, a decent bag, a decent knife, a decent axe, a decent water bottle, a decent water purifier, a decent knife sharpener, a decent pair of socks, probably some gloves. And then also, the most important thing is what you're doing. Look after your health. The most important thing. So what you guys are up to is massively valuable, because if you ain't got your health, you ain't got nothing. Which is the reason why we're being poisoned and the food supply's crap and the water's crap and everything's crap, because they just want to make you crap, because you're easier to, you're easier to deal with, and also you're easier to extract loads of money out of. That's the way I realize that most people understand what's going on. Like if you say they're doing it for money, people go, yeah, 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 okay, I
Oh,
know, I can
yeah,
see that. And they
yeah.
are, they are.
Yeah, I think
So yeah, it's difficult, man, to give people advice to really in a short space of time.
just start basically.
Yeah, like so, for instance, like I'm not going to say go and learn how to do hand drills and bow drill. What I'm going to say for the particular time we're in is go and buy a head torch, go and buy a Petzl head torch with something that goes in the back of it called a core battery, which means you don't need to buy AA batteries anymore. You can just have this one battery that goes in the back. Now you can recharge that off like a little mini solar panel, which is lightweight and it can fit in a rucksack. That is a very, very useful tool because it does get dark for many hours of the day. And if something goes wrong in those hours of the day, it's very nice to see what you're doing. So having a head torch that isn't going to break is a very, very, very useful bit of kit. So go and buy a Petzl head torch with a core battery. And when I say go and buy a Petzl head torch, I really mean it, and I mean a Petzl head torch, and not a whatever manufacturer. I can't think one off the top of my head now, because I've done many, many talks to people, and I've said, go and buy a Petzl head torch, and then when I see people a few months down the line, they go, I did what you said, I went and got a head torch. And I look at the head torch, and on the head torch, it doesn't say Petzl. And I know damn well it's going to break. So there's a reason why I'm saying to people what I'm saying. I'm not saying because I like that brand, or I'm making money out of it, or I like the color that the head torch comes in. No, I'm saying what I'm saying because I know what works, because I've been doing it for a long, long time. And I really actually do care about having the right things. So a Petzl head torch, a Tom Brown tracker knife, a rucksack made out of leather would be ideal, but just, a decent rucksack that isn't going to break. You have to spend money on products that are decent, unfortunately. If you buy a cheap piece of crap, guess what? It will break. So yeah, leather clothing is important. If you've got the money, then buy titanium water bottles because they'll last forever and they're incredibly lightweight. Buy a titanium spade if you can, because it won't break, it will last forever, and it will be very, very lightweight. Um, you're the man to speak to about water purifiers. What was the name of that company that make that water filter where it takes out everything?
Yeah,
What's
they're
that?
called, the company's called thewatermachine.com, and I'll put our discount code in the description below. But I found that they do the best filters, but the housing, well, wasn't suitable for me in this situation because it was glass and I didn't really fancy putting that in my luggage. But I found a brand, I think it's called Trevor or Vivor. I can't remember. It's like an English camping company, but they sold food grade stainless steel housing at a fraction of the price compared to people like Berkey, for example. And then because the fittings are universal, I just placed that in there, and that's been a game changer because it doesn't require electricity. And if you know, it's not something I try to think about all the time, but if I'm on the other side of the world and shit hits the fan and all the power's off, I can put seawater in that if I want to. and I will have clean water. I mean, sort of touching on what you said earlier, I the moment it sort of penny dropped for me, I was sat in Bristol one day when I was younger. I was eating a pizza, and I was looking out, and at the time we'd been discussing this, like, what if the power went out kind of scenario, and I just thought, like, if the power went out for like an extended period of time, this place would turn into like savagery whoa quick. Like if the shops weren't getting restocked, it would go mental. And I think this is where the primitive skills and survival are super important, because I feel that it's going to get to a point when they say you've got to have this chip in order to function in society. That seems to be what they're putting out with these 15 smart cities, 15-minute smart cities, and all this malark. So I mean, unless you really want to do that, the only other alternative is us building another system, and then if that gets wiped out and you're stuck with nothing, you better learn how to survive, or you could have all the health in the world, but if you can't eat, then it's going to go pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing as well, along the same lines, like the difference I noticed with the primitive skills is the sheer freedom that it gives you. Like the Amish, for instance, I think the way the Amish live is amazing. Do you know what I mean? They don't adopt any modern technology like whatsoever. Like they really do live in the old way, which is fantastic. But let's say,
Apart from they got a little bit of a problem with like the incest and the rapage, from what I hear. But apart from that, I'm fully on board with what you're saying.
right. But yeah, in terms of like, not like so much that, but just, like they're living sort of basically very sort of close to, they're providing a lot of their own needs without, like heavy machinery and too much technology. Which, to me, I think that's really, really good. But let's say because of the freedom that the way that they live enables them, like it's very difficult to the government to control them because they're just providing everything that they need for themselves. So let's say, okay, the government go, we don't really like these kind of people because what if everyone looks at the model they're doing and then everyone goes, well, we'll just copy what they do and we can all like go and sort of like live in our own little societies. It'd be very easy for the government to fly over and one of their planes with some kind of like, you know, Jew weaponry attached to the front of it or whatever and just like burn your farm down. And then, you're pretty much screwed because you know, if you take their farm away from them, now they've got to completely relocate and build a whole new farm from scratch. And if you've got an entire army of Karens after you, it's difficult to build a whole new like farm. So the thing that, for me, like what I was saying with the primitive skills, the freedom it gives you is you can go anywhere with nothing and build a whole new way of life from scratch. And that to me is the thing that I really, really liked about it. It so I've said a sort of few things about like when I was young, why I just wanted to live simply, and why waking up was not a big deal for me, and also why I've ended up living the way that I live, and why I've never been a tech head, a sci-fi boff, and I'm really not that bothered about all the modern stuff. Don't get me wrong, I can appreciate it, and I also understand some of the effort that we've put into creating some of the modern world. I'm not like ignorant to that. We have done some amazing things, but I really am like a kind of proper like Luddite nature boy, really. And it was only a few years ago that I found out why. Because so when I grew up, so from my dad's side, we basically are travelers. When I grew up, we went to gatherings where there was travellers. And back then, travellers did something called banger racings, when they drive around in cars, they crash into each other, and at the end they have a demolition derby, and they all smash each other, and it's highly entertaining. And also, while that's going on, there's also a lot of like boxing and bare knuckle fighting and that kind of thing going on. It's what travellers do. Um, and that was part of what I saw when I was growing up, because it's basically where my dad's side come from. So I was chatting to a guy one day that I built a roundhouse for, and talking about, my sort of past and stuff like that. And he says to me, because I've got land now, he said, "So have you got Romany in you?" And I was like, I don't actually really know." And he goes, "You should find out, because if you've got Romany in you, so there used to be a law in the UK that if you've got Romany blood and you can prove it, you are unable to live on your land because of the traveller sort of rights that we used to have in this country. I would have been able to live on my land as a traveller without having to all this planning nonsense and all this sort of stuff. So I said to him, "Okay, I'm seeing my dad in a few weeks. I'll ask him." So when I saw my dad a few weeks later, I said, "Have we actually got any Romany in us, Dad? Or, we're just kind of, like more like travellers?" And my dad said, "No, no, I grew up speaking Romany. Your grandma was born in the back of a barrel wagon. And, that's basically like your bloodlines where I come from." Funnily enough, I saw my dad only last weekend, and he's got our family tree all the way back to like 1830 or something like that. So I come from a long line of Romany travellers, so we built things with our hands. We lived this traveller lifestyle. We lived a lot more simple. We traveled around, and that's like when I heard about something, from doing all this research over the years of trying to figure stuff out, I'm come across something like epigenetics. So I'm now realizing, I'm understanding that, I get it now. I understand why I want to live simply. When I was young, I never liked big objects. I never liked houses because you can't pick them up and carry them. I never liked cars. I never liked speedboats. I was always liked things that you could pick up and carry. I always liked simple things. I never liked authority. And funny enough, I always liked to scrap. I just naturally was always drawn to fighting. So when that old saying of like, it's in your blood, there is such a thing as epigenetics. It really exists. And I've experienced it for myself. So many things in my life, I've experienced them for myself, which is the reason why, to me, it's a fact. And like that we're talking about now, the way we're living now, that's shaping our epigenetics. The diet that we are living is shaping our bone structure. The way we are living now is shaping our minds. It's epigenetically affecting the next generation. And we will get to a point where, and this is basically what eugenics is eugenics is controlling an environment to create a certain result. And the environment that they're controlling is the human life, the human experience, and our way of life, which is connected to our genetics. And therefore, if you create like people that don't live in nature, are used to being told what to do, used to living this way, their body is so sick, they pass that sickness on to their next generation. So, like, for instance, now people are having trouble digesting certain things and they're nutritionally deficient. They can't do part of the methylation process. If you can't turn folic acid into methylfolate, you can't make that transition. You are now deficient. And if you can't sort that out, you will pass that on. Same, like you will pass on an unconscious state of being to your children. Like that's what eugenics is. That's what epigenetics really is. It's passing on like that to the next generation. Yeah. So like I'm literally looking at the effects in my life of epigenetics because I've discovered this whole thing about me being a Romany. Everything like it's like it's clear to me now like why I am the way I am. So yeah, it's really, really interesting, like learning that about my past. Fascinating. But yeah, it's a scary thing to think that, I see it, mate. I see the sickness that we just keep passing on and we keep passing it on. And it's being done on purpose. Like, so a lot of women now have like their hips are not what they call birthing hips. And this is from like a lack of nutrition and because like we've interbred and changed, like I was talking about, it's changed our bone structure. So like for instance, people now, women struggle to give birth. Cows, for instance, cannot give birth without human interaction, is where cows come from the urox. Uroxes are extinct. They don't exist anymore. We've now got the domesticated cow. Most domesticated cows can't give birth without human beings. Therefore, if we all died and a lot of cows were left alone, they wouldn't be able to give birth to their own young, which means they'd genetically die off. And it's the same with us now. We're so domesticated, so genetically altered that it's like taking a pug, put it out in the wild and saying, good luck. A pug ain't going to survive, but a wolf can. A domesticated human being will not survive. And it's not just because you physically don't have the information of how to survive in the environment. It's because our genetics and our physical structure have been changed over such a long period of time that, we're just different now. We're different. Most girls, unfortunately, can't give birth. They have to have C-sections. I'm talking about this because I've experienced this for myself. Um, this is how we get affected by nutritional deficiencies. What was that guy years ago who went and studied all their ancient tribes? What's that guy's name?
Western eight
Yeah,
price.
See, that's what he's showing. He's showing as soon as you go onto westernized diet, it physically affects you. Those deficiencies that these people have gained, that's passed on to the next generation. And
The
the way
crazy,
we're living now,
sorry to interrupt. The crazy thing that I was just doing some research on the other day. The crazy thing that hit me was like it was literally one generation often in these tribes when they were introduced to these soft, nutritionally devoid foods that their teeth, for example, their heads wouldn't grow properly in one generation. But you can change it
yeah.
back. That's the good thing.
That's the thing about it. It happens so quickly. It's like when you train, like you stop training and it's like, okay, you lose a bit of your muscle mass or your muscle strength or whatever, but then it comes back really, really quickly. Same with intelligence, mate. Like you don't need to gain something to become more intelligent. You just need to start doing like certain things that changes the way that you think about stuff. Like life's amazing. It responds so quick. But if we keep passing on the nutritional deficiencies that we are now, because they're actually starting to get pretty severe to the point where, we're like a pug, mate. Pugs are pretty messed up. Like my wife's got a couple of my wife's mum has pugs and they're always sick. They're always going blind and getting these cancers and
Yeah.
just loads of problems. And if human beings carry on the path that we're on, we're just going to be so ill, along with the combination of the fact that we're just told it's just the way it is. Unfortunately, life's just like this. When you get old, you just get sick. And unfortunately, if we just carry on believing in that, then yeah, we'll just get to the point where, yeah, we'll be sick and we will be broken. But if you know how to have the correct diet and live in the right environment and live in the right way, then you can be super, super healthy. You can have an incredible functioning mind. You can experience peace. You can experience fulfillment. You can be happy in moments in life that do make you happy. And when these things are in your life, you just feel good. It's nice feeling good. It's nice understanding that I can figure out whatever I want, which basically means whatever I choose to take on in my life now, I can do it. All I need is the will to do it. I don't need to go and ask somebody how. I don't need to somehow speak to somebody that I see as more intelligent than me. They're not more intelligent than me. Like they might know something that I don't, but it doesn't mean that they're more intelligent. It just means that they've dedicated more time in their life to understanding that. It's not because I can't. Do you know what I mean? All this stuff is it's just good, all of the stuff now in my life, life to me feels like an adventure. And I know for a lot of people, it doesn't. I know it doesn't. I can see it on people's faces, mate. People look sick. People look broken. People look unhappy. And I completely understand why. I would be, mate. If somebody's put me in some flat in London and 8 hours of my day was doing something that I wasn't into, yeah, I would be unhappy. I do have the ability now through discipline to spend quite a bit of time doing something that is discomforting, but still, still pursuing that, but then getting a sense of fulfillment at the end. You know, I totally can do things I don't want to do because you do get fulfillment out of it. But the way we live in now, mate, nah, it ain't conducive to human beings feeling awesome.
What's what's your hot take on the situation right now? Where do you see this all going? How do you see this playing out?
Ah, right. So I'm a man of truth, actually. Like, I don't like, um, I don't like lying. Basically, I actually do like speaking truth. Speaking truth to me, gives me a feeling of being authentic. Um, and then from feeling authentic, that connects me with life in a way that I can't really explain in words. Um, so I just like speaking truth. Like, understandably, it's my truth. Obviously, people will hear what I say and they will go, I don't go along with that. So it's not truth to them. But to me, I like to speak to my truth. So if you ask me the situation that like I see that we're in now, um, honestly, mate, um, yeah, I'm pretty concerned. I understand as well that there is also a lot, there's a lot of good stuff going on. You go on the internet now. Years ago, when I was starting to research stuff, there wasn't nothing, there wasn't a music industry with a whole genre of like conscious music. That didn't exist. There wasn't very many books. Like the internet wasn't a thing. So it wasn't actually easy to communicate with people with all these new ideas. So like I'm not like a complete doomer. I do see loads of amazing stuff going on. Permaculture, community, nature connection, you know, like you look how big bushcraft is now, off-grid living. There's loads of stuff that's going on, which is amazing, and it is like heading what I see in a more positive and coherent direction. But I'm not gonna lie, mate. I'm very concerned because there are people in the world that they are extremely messed up and psychopathic, and I just don't really see that they kind of are going to sort it out. And unfortunately, a lot of those people with an extremely damaged human psyche have a lot of power, a lot of influence. And yeah, when you've got lots of money and lots of influence, you can do a lot of bad things, a lot of bad things. Like was my analogy before of like, you take somebody years ago, they couldn't do that much damage. As soon as somebody's got endless amounts of power, the damage that they can do in the world, if they're a broken human being, is unfathomable. And so that's the reason why I'm actually very concerned about the future. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not being a doomer. I don't think it ends well, mate. I really don't. I really don't. I don't see enough human beings waking up within probably the amount of time that we need to start looking after nature and to sort of get to the realization where we can do something about all these people that are causing major problems, Like how are we going to stop the owners of the enormous corporations from having wars and building, like making viruses in labs and spraying skies and buying farmland and dropping bombs and building vaccines which don't promote human health and designing programs to learn how the human psyche works so we can be manipulated more. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just, yeah. So I'm not like actually, I'm not full of hope. But, and it is a big but, I don't let that ruin my day. I will, I don't stop. Do you know what I mean? Like, I literally, I don't rest. I don't stay. Action, um, to do what I can, as they say. You know what I mean? I'm trying to do my bit because, like I say, I feel I have a responsibility to do that. And also, it makes me feel good. And also, yeah, what else? What else am I going to do except for the best thing that I can possibly do, which to me is to try and help in some way from what I've learned. Hey, mate, nah, it ain't gonna won't go well. But guess what? We only human beings, we only learn from struggle. Ultimately, struggle and making mistakes. And there's no way we're going to pull ourselves out of the shit that we're in if things don't get really, really bad. Because a lot of people, life's pretty comfortable for, so they have no reason to change. And the people at the top, they're like way too messed up and power hungry for the change, so they're not going to change. So something's got to give. And unfortunately, something's got to give. And yeah, so unfortunately, yeah, shit is going to get pretty bad. But yeah, no, I'm actually very concerned, mate, because like you've just said, we can see where these people want to take it to the point where you've got this chip, the grid's built, the having control over us is extremely doing something now basically without AI knowing. I can just see it. This robot comes over. Your existence tax has just run out, sir. If you don't pay your existence tax, we're going to put you in a room that you can't get out of. It's like, why are you going to do that? Well, because if we put you in a room that you can't get out of, you won't like it. And if you don't like it, then you'll want to do what we say because then you don't have to stay over there anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's just messed up. And this ain't going to stop. This control's only going to get worse and worse. But I don't believe that enough people are going to wake up. And I think we're going to get to a point where society breaks. And when it breaks, mate, oh my God. Like personally, I ideally my ideal situation for when it goes horribly wrong, I'd like to be in the middle of nowhere. Like really, I mean like really out in an extremely remote place. Because if the power did go off and it wasn't coming back, all this stuff, all this talk of like, we're going to create a utopia and we're going to live in a village and love each other. And, we're going to just have this beautiful existence. I'm sorry, you're not going to live like that when people down the road don't have any food or they haven't got any water anymore or whoever, decides I'm hungry. I want what you've got. I'm pretty sure that you're probably not going to be able to go, oh, come in, welcome, here, have some of our carrots. Or, it ain't going to go like that. When shit hits the fan, shit hits the fan. Like because of looking into survival for many years, I've done like research into like the Bolshevik War and what really happened in like you look back through history, shit can get really bad, like really bad. It gets to the point where people go, do you know what? I can have another baby, but if I don't eat my baby, then I'm going to die right now and I will not survive. You have stories of people eating their own babies to keep themselves alive. People chewed belts. People ate wool blankets. People will do anything to survive, mate. I've eaten rank, mouldy old fish. I've eaten shrews. I've eaten rats. I've eaten rotten birds. Like, I know what human beings will do to survive, and I also know how bad things can really get. But unfortunately, we're living in a bit of period in history where we have got massively complacent. Oh, that won't happen over here. No, 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 that won't happen to us. That'll never happen. And yeah, sorry to say it, that it can, and one day it probably will. And yeah, when it does go bad, it will go really, really bad. And yeah, and I'm concerned, mate. I'm very, very concerned because from what I see, the people that have massive power and massive influence, they're pretty messed up people. And if you think they care about you, my God, you are going to be shocked because they don't care about you whatsoever. Like, I even see it just in more everyday life. You look at some people who have got quite a bit of wealth, they're extremely arrogant, and they'll look at working class people and they look at you like, you are scum. And it's very similar to the way modern man looks at our ancestors. They perceive our ancestors as the way a posh person looks at a working class person, almost with disgust. I see it, mate. I've seen it. I've seen, well, because to me, wearing clothing that looks a certain way or driving around in a car which costs loads of money, but at the end of the day, that car is still made of metal. Same as what a car that they would call like a piece of shit. It's the same material. Only difference is that car's in a particular shape and it has a particular logo on the front of it that people go, ooh, oh wow, that car's really special and that car's a piece of shit. Like that's the same mindset in the way a wealthy person will look at a working class person like that they are scum. And it's a mind virus. It's not good, mate. When you've got in that kind of thing of like, that's amazing and that's not. And that's the way these people see us, mate. These so-called elites, people with power and massive wealth, they don't care about you. And because they don't care about you, you think that what? You think that they're not gonna put something in the water, or they're not going to put something in the food, or they're going to give false results on the effects of that. Like, nah, people need to snap out of it. Like, they don't give a shit. And if you don't look after yourself, no one will. Like, that's another thing, big thing. Like, I kind of dropped the bomb on me years ago is when you realize that there isn't really that many people that care about you. So if you don't actually like learn to look after yourself, potentially you will be in a state where you're going to experience pain, whether that's physical pain, mental pain, or emotional pain, you will suffer. So I guess like a lot of this stuff I'm learning as well is because I don't want to suffer. I actually want life to be great. I want life to be adventurous. I want to experience happiness when things make me happy. I want to experience fulfillment. I don't want to be confused. I want to like live a life where I understand things because then that means that whatever I'm doing, I can get to a sort of a more level of it's more fulfilling. You yeah, I don't really know. It's difficult to sort of put it into words, but you get what I'm saying. You know, why would you not want life to be more amazing in every way? Like that's basically what I've sort of tried to do. It's like I'm trying to be healthy, I'm trying to be free, I want to have an adventure. Like years ago, from living in the woods, I was like, I don't like living with a clock in my life. I worked out that when I have to be somewhere at a certain time, that puts me in a state of kind of stress. I have to look at the clock. I can't just go off and be in like a flow state because I always got it in the back of my head that I need to be there at that particular time. So I want to live without the time. I don't want to have to be a slave to money. I really need to live near clean water. It's one of the reasons why I live where I live now, because I've got like a priority list in my life. Definitely got to be healthy. Okay, so I need clean food. I need clean water. I don't want to live near Karens because Karens don't make me happy. Oh my God, I've just realised, mate, what's walking around my teepee is a cow. There's cows all over my land. I
What?
might I might have to go, mate. I think I've got a
How have
load of
you got a
cows.
fucking cow on your land? You got a river there.
There's cows on my land, mate. I might have
Wait,
to get rid of them.
take the camera. Take the camera. Let's have a look.
The reason why I might have to move them, mate, is because if they start squashing all of Holly's, there you go. There's a
There's
cow.
a fucking cow on John's land.
Yeah,
All
because I
right,
don't.
mate.
If they, do you know what I mean? If they start running over all of Holly's plants, it's not going to be good. Don't
All
go
right.
that way, mate. Don't go that way, cow. No, not that way. I've got to chase
So,
the cow back in the
all
other
right.
direction.
Well,
Go that
maybe.
way. Go, go.
Oh my God.
I don't, come on,
You,
mate. Go on, off you
you're
go.
seeing it here
No, no.
first, ladies and gentlemen, live on the Crystalline podcast, while John is chasing a cow off his
Go,
land.
go, go. Come
I guess
on.
that's the beauty of living off grid, eh?
Go, go.
There's your adventure, mate.
No, not that way. Oh
I
man.
can't believe what I'm watching here.
Come on, mate, go that way. Go on, off you go. Oh, go. You can't go up there. You're not. That's it. Go, go.
Put it on Nick's land.
Yeah, go on, mate. Go. Yeah. Go. Yeah. Go. Come on.
Oh my goodness. What an episode this has been.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure how that got on the land, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I know your land quite well. I can't really see how that's happened. But
Yeah, it's funny. 'Cause, I said to you, I can hear something big running around the tent because I specifically told the children to not interrupt on the podcast.
I saw something walk past. I thought it was a
Yeah,
dog.
I was like, there's definitely something pretty big walking around the teepee, and that's what it was.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was gonna. So we've kind of covered we've kind of covered that before the cow saga. But what I wanted to know, or wanted to get into briefly, so your leatherwork is of such a high quality. The stuff you've produced, like your bags and the leather tents, which are, I mean, I've stayed in one myself. They're phenomenal. So if people hearing this, after hearing your advice on what's the bivy bags,
Yeah.
they're hearing your advice on getting quality handmade leather materials. If people were to get in contact with you to acquire these from yourself, is that possible?
Yes, it is, and something that something I'm in the process of at the moment, but something I really want to get going is I want to have a website which has got my bed rolls, my leather bush shirts, my leather cloaks, and like leather tents and stuff like that. I do want to make these items available to people. So I'm in the process of just finalizing some of the designs. And then, yeah, I will have a website and I know what it's going to be called now, which might sound a bit weird when I first tell you, but I'll explain where
Save
I'm.
it and keep the name until you've got it launched in case someone copies it or something.
Yeah. Good idea.
I was hoping maybe you could, if you were up for it, maybe people could get in contact with an email or your YouTube or some other way of contacting you in case they want it right this second and they don't want to wait till this website's made.
Yeah. Well, my YouTube channel used to be called Primitive Ways, but at the moment, my YouTube channel is called Authentic Outdoorsman. And if anyone, basically anybody can just get in contact with me through like the messaging comments on YouTube. If they leave a comment, I'll see it. And, I can just put my email on there and my phone number. And I'm totally happy to, like, if somebody wanted to learn to make this stuff for themselves, I want to do workshops like that. And, if anyone wants to like some bushcraft lessons or some primitive skills lessons, or they want to buy a really good bag or a really good bit of clothes, or they'd like to come and learn how to make it or something like that, just get in contact. I'm very approachable, and like I say, I really do want this knowledge and stuff to get out there, which is the reason why. So where I am at the moment on my land, I'm slowly wanting to turn my land into like a bushcraft school. So it is something I want to do is to start like teaching all this sort of stuff.
Perfect. All right. Well, would you be happy with if we put your email in the description of this video?
Yeah, definitely, mate.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, John, I am going to have to wrap it up here because it is getting late and I am starting to fade.
Yeah, and I think I've got to go and get this cow off my land properly as well.
Yeah, but we'll do this again and we've got a lot more to cover, but it's been good catching up.
Yeah, you too, mate. You too. I'd love to do it again because I'd like to go into like some of the other stuff that I also learned from, a lot of the psychological sort of, I don't know, and like ways of looking at life and stuff through, through doing this stuff. There's more of that.
Yeah, we got a lot to cover. I mean, we've spoken in person about many things that we have only scratched the surface of tonight. So I will let you go deal with this cow, and I will get some shut eye.
Nice one, man. Sleep well, bro.
Look after yourself.
You too, mate. I'll see you soon.
We'll see you when I'm looking at you. This podcast is to inspire. I've got loads of interesting people